Right. So today we're diving into something pretty heavy.
Yeah.
It's, well, it's tough. No way around it.
Right.
News excerpts detailing a horrific case of child sex abuse
Awful.
in Glasgow.
Yeah.
It's actually the largest prosecution of its kind in Scottish history. And as hard as it is to face, I think we got to unpack what happened, try to understand, the implications and talk about why it even matters.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when we're talking about protecting kids.
Protecting children, exactly.
Yeah, and what gets me is how this case has revealed all these cracks in the systems that are supposed to be protecting those vulnerable kids.
Right, you're right. But before we even, get into all that, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about, the basics, what actually even happened, right?
Okay, yeah.
7 adults.
Okay.
7 adults. Iain Owens, Elaine Lannery, Lesley Williams, Paul Brannan, Scott Forbes, Barry Watson, and John Clark.
Okay.
All found guilty. And the details, honestly, they're gut-wrenching.
I bet.
We're talking about organized sexual abuse of multiple children, all primary school age, taking place over 7 years.
Oh my gosh.
7 years.
That's so long.
In a Glasgow drug den.
It's awful.
It's just, it's unfathomable to me. 7 years. The news excerpts even mentioned the children were given alcohol and cocaine.
Oh,
And there's even evidence that older children were forced to participate in abusing younger children.
oh my God.
It's just...
It's just like a level of cruelty that's just really hard to even comprehend,
Totally.
The judge presiding over this case even used the phrase "depths of human depravity."
Wow.
And I think that really captures it, the gravity of what those poor kids endured.
It really does. And then you read that the children themselves, they refer to the place, this awful place, as the Beastie House.
Oh God.
And it's just this other, layer of chilling reality to this whole situation.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, where was everyone? Where were the adults, the people who should have been, taking care of them, protecting these kids?
Right. And that's the thing, right? This whole case has sparked outrage.
Yeah.
Major outcry. Even the Scottish government has come out and acknowledged their failure to protect these children.
Really?
The children's minister straight up said there is no getting away from the fact that these children were failed.
Wow.
Yeah, point blank.
Yeah.
And now they've launched this huge review to try and figure out what went wrong and how to make their safeguarding procedures better.
Yeah, it's about time.
So this is where it gets really interesting to me, right?
Okay.
On the one hand, you have these horrific acts committed by individuals.
Right.
But then you have this whole other layer of systemic failure.
Yeah.
This case, it just suggests that the procedures, the things that were in place that were supposed to protect children, they weren't enough.
Yeah.
So, were the warning signs missed? Were the resources to intervene, were they just not there?
Right. It's what happened?
Yeah, what went wrong?
Yeah, and I think the answer is probably a combination of a lot of different things, It's complicated.
Yeah.
Because, look, child sex abuse is a really deeply rooted problem.
Yeah.
With consequences that go way beyond the immediate situation, the impact on these victims. It's huge, both immediately and over the long term.
Right.
They could be dealing with trauma, PTSD, they might have a hard time forming relationships, all sorts of stuff.
It's just awful.
Yeah.
And tragically, it often becomes a cycle that's hard to break.
Exactly. Victims of abuse are actually statistically more likely to become abusers themselves.
It's terrible.
And, this case with the older children being forced to abuse younger ones, it's just a terrifying example of that cycle playing out in real life.
I know. It's just, when I read that part about the older children, it hit me hard.
It's really disturbing.
It shows just how far the effects of abuse can go, how it can ripple outwards.
Definitely. It really highlights why we need those strong safeguarding systems, preventative measures, early intervention programs, all of it.
Yeah.
We need to identify the warning signs, the red flags early on and provide support to both victims and potential abusers, Try to break that cycle.
So let's talk about that bigger picture.
Okay.
Because this case, as horrible as it is, it's not an isolated incident.
Sadly not.
Child abuse is a problem, everywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what does this case tell us about children and the systems that are supposed to protect them?
Well, I think it shows that we need to do better. as a society. We need to look at the bigger picture, all the factors involved.
Yeah.
There's poverty, drug abuse, lack of community support.
Right, right.
These things make children more vulnerable, and it can't just be about reacting after the fact.
Exactly.
It's got to be multifaceted, a whole approach, not just a Band-Aid solution.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Scottish government's review, that's good. It's a step.
It's a start.
But it's just the beginning, right?
Absolutely. This has to be a catalyst for real change.
Okay, so what needs to happen?
Okay, well, we need to invest in preventative measures, education, support services.
Okay.
And we need to create a culture where kids feel safe to speak up and where adults know how to recognize and report the signs of abuse,
Right. It's a lot, but it's so important.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed just going through all these details with you.
I know, it's heavy stuff.
This is really heavy stuff, so I can only imagine what other folks listening are feeling.
Yeah.
But I think the main takeaway here is that, child protection, it's not just the responsibility of like social services or the police.
Right.
It's on all of us, everyone.
I completely agree. It's a wake-up call for all of us. We have to be vigilant in our own homes, in our communities, everywhere.
Yeah. And it starts with awareness. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about what you can do in your own community to break this cycle of abuse. Maybe it's volunteering your time, donating to a charity, just being more aware of the signs of abuse, knowing how to report them.
All of that helps.
Every little bit, it really does count. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you so much for listening.